Toon's perspective. My fiancé vaults the railing from the walkway above us. As he and Fran fall through the air, I know I should open fire. Right now, he can't be bargained with. He can't be reasoned with. He doesn't feel pity, or fear, or remorse. And he absolutely will not stop until he has carried out the creepy purple woman's order. I hesitate. It's only for about 0.9 seconds, but that's 0.9 seconds in which there are 12 shots I don't take. 0.9 seconds where he makes it all the way to the ground. My hesitation isn't articulated any more coherently than no! My mind knows I should be taking advantage of his airtime to take shots, that it would be nearly impossible for him to dodge. My trigger fingers just won't follow the command to do it. Victor is the love of my life, and my every instinct rebels against my conscious mind telling me to hurt him. This is exactly what Samus meant by pull the trigger when it counts. She and Zon have already fired 7 shots at Fran between them. They aren't having to agonize like this, like I am. The instant he touches the ground, I finally get a hold of myself. My conscious mind takes command and silences all dissent. Kinetic pulses ripple through the air towards the man I love. My upper arms tug at his head, hoping to concuss him. My lowers tug at his ankles, hoping to lame him. Now on the ground, he's able to dodge and weave from my fire in a way that he wouldn't have been able to while falling. He's winged by a few of the shots, but none have the solid connection that would be needed to have any chance of breaking a bone or causing brain trauma. As he accelerates towards me, I back away while continuing to fire all 4 of my pistols at him. Every extra meter will mean another 3 or 4 shots I can send in his direction. The pulse pistols are light and plastic, but their weight adds just enough inertia to my arms that I'm unable to escape Victor using his 2 hands to grasp the wrists of my uppers. I bring up my lowers to try leveling point-blank pulses into his diaphragm, but his knee shoots between the pistols and flies from one to the other, imparting each with enough lateral momentum that it sends my 2 lower arms swinging sideways, irresistibly, before using his enormous strength to slam my upper hand's pistols together over his head. The flimsy weapons shatter into pieces. Before he can figure out how to break the lower 2 as well, I slide from his iron grip using my superior flexibility and Baguana training. The second I freed myself, I leap backward, attempting to bring up my lower arms to keep firing at him until he has accumulated enough damage to be incapable of continuing to fight me. He doesn't miss a beat, closing the distance back up and spinning towards me, aiming a rapid-fire series of tornado kicks at exactly the height that denies me the opportunity to put my guns between me and him, for fear of losing them. My saving grace, as far as this fight goes on, is that his strikes are the same limp, weak, half-hearted ones he uses when we spar, and don't have the, to me, deadly power he hits Samus, Zon, Fran and Kaz with when he spars with them. Though if he succeeds in taking me prisoner for the one holding him in thrall, I may eventually end up wishing she'd just told him to kill me. Thinking that makes me misjudge an attempt to shoot him, and Victor's left foot smashes through one of my plastic pistols, causing it to knock into the other, breaking both of them to pieces. All 4 hands are now empty. I instantly leap backwards and whip into a Bagua stance, adjusted for my non-human physiology. My lower arms are in a Qi Long Bu, dragon riding guard, and my uppers in the normal Dan Huan Zhang, single palm charge. My legs are in Zhuang Zhang, circle walking posture, but lower, both to minimize the target my legs present to Victor's kicks, and give myself more stability with a lower center of mass. He doesn't give me a moment of respite, launching himself forward in a powerful front kick, aimed at my solar plexus, with the intention of knocking the air out of my lungs. I dart out of the way and begin a rapid Nibu, mud-walking step, circling around him to keep myself out of the way of his fierce strikes. I use my long upper arms to attack anywhere on his body that I know to be weak, while staying out of his arm's reach, though still inside that of his legs. I strike for his ribs, his liver, his spleen, his armpits, his elbows. My lower arms parry his every attempt to hit me that I'm not able to simply dodge. I don't aim any kicks for his shins, since I'll definitely not have the strength to break his bones, and he won't feel the pain while he's enthralled. I feel a moment of alarm as, in my periphery, I become aware of Fran getting a hold of her girlfriend's ankles and literally swinging her into Samus like a club. It distracts me for less than 0.1 seconds before I refocus on Victor. Keeping him from joining Fran against the other two is probably the greatest help I can hope to give them right now, so it's best if I focus. Though his strikes are ferocious, the lag, both from him processing much slower than I do, and having a more massive body with higher inertia, is quite noticeable. His strikes are fairly simple for me to predict, and redirect with Bagua's 64 transformations. That is, until my fast twitch muscle starts to fail. I know it's only a matter of around 50 to 55 seconds before I've got nothing left to run or fight with, whereas Victor, being an incredibly well-trained and fit sapiens human, will be able to keep going and going and going. I don't agonize like I did over shooting him. What I'm about to do is dangerous, but given how badly Samus and Zon's fight with Fran seems to be going, this is the least of all the evils open to me at the moment. I take advantage of an instant where his momentum carries him a little away from me. Inside of a quarter of a second, all four of my hands dart to my hips and come away holding razor-sharp daggers. Their fusion cores have been deactivated, but for my purposes that's perfect. I don't want to decapitate or dismember Victor, or stab him through his ribcage to ball the blood out of his heart. I want to employ knowledge I was taught by Mama Cat. People think that Norse arts and other European arts are clumsy, slow, brutish, that the battlefields of historical Europe were strewn with severed heads and parted limbs. Not so, Tony. I remember her saying when I was maybe 8 or 9. Look at this server. You see how thin the blade is? What do you imagine would happen if you spent hours hacking into Terran bones with it? It would dent, chip, fracture. No. The primary objective of historical European warriors was not to part their opponents with their limbs, but to part them with their blood. Terran bodies have and need to have a lot of blood under a lot of pressure to fight against our high gravity. You slice a hole in their flesh, and all that blood comes out, and fast. A drop in blood pressure will very quickly cause a human to lose consciousness. Best part is, so long as you're careful not to cut your opponent too deeply, they don't even need to die. If your side is able to bandage them up after you've achieved victory, then you might have a valuable prisoner. Not quite the hack-and-slash image most people probably picture when they think of a pre-gunpowder European battlefield, is it? Ultimately, Banguzan was a better fit for making the most of my abilities than RNMA or HEMA, but it was Mama Cat, not Shifu Zhu, who taught me that lesson. With my knives drawn is Victor, who's now on the back foot, dodging, parrying, and retreating towards the purple woman as I go on the offensive, aiming a whirlwind of vicious slashes at his arms and legs, hoping to cut his basilic and sapphonius veins. I score a hit on the inside of his left forearm. Though I see the telltale scarlet crimson glint of human blood, just a tiny bit darker than mine, I know it's not enough. That cut was too shallow. He's not going to lose enough blood from just that one before I've run out of stamina. I keep pushing him backwards, past Salmon and Zon's fight with Fran, to just below where he initially dropped down from. The Frowmaker is just meters away to my top right, but I can't focus on her. Now that Victor has his back to the wall, I'm able to get several more cuts against his bare arms and upper legs. I'm just allowing myself a little feeling of triumph when he takes advantage of my complacency. He pushes off the wall and straight from my knives into my chest. He cuts himself on the left side of his head and right shoulder, but the next instant my back hits the ground. My grip loosens on the knives in my right hands, and they skid away from my grasp from the force of the fall. I'm about to swing for him with my left hands, but his right arm comes down on their wrists, shattering the uppers with his fist, and the lowers with his elbow. I scream. I'm disarmed and pinned beneath the enormous mass of the love of my life. He is covered in his blood, and its ferric tang fills my nostrils. His skin that I can see is pallid and clammy with cold sweat, but it's not enough. He's still conscious, and I'm beaten. I look over to Fran to see her standing over a defeated Zon and Samus. Panic that I held at bay during the fight rises in my belly at the knowledge that she's about to kill them. They're about to die, and I'm about to be kidnapped and taken across space to a planet of human slavers to be made a present of. I watch as Fran bends down to take off Samus's helmet. Half conscious, Samus peers blearily up into the blank face of the strongest human woman in the galaxy, as Fran draws back a punch that I know will be more than 500 joules of force, closer to the kinetic energy of a 9mm handgun round than a regular human's punch. If Samus isn't killed by the first, she definitely will by the second or third. Then, "Stop!" shrieks a panicked voice that it takes me a moment to recognize. Fran stops dead, her fist still raised beside her head and pointed at Samus's face. I turn to look past Victor, up at the woman in the purple glamour armor. She's looking past us all, down the length of the cargo bay. I follow her gaze. Krakoan's perspective. I'm well ahead of Arketh, Wardov, Kawavath, and Vroch, the other 4 women in the Vrakhan delegation. None of them were able to run here as fast as I could. As I round the corner of the enormous roofless room, which the woman in the rectangle that's strung from my neck tells me is where I need to be, it looks as if it's fortunate that I did. I see the 3 women fighting against the 2 mind slaves in the back of a beautiful glossy purple sky ship, while a woman who's surrounded by a ghostly aura watches from above. I say fighting, but from how it looks, losing to might be more accurate. The pair look as if they've just finished defeating the trio. I tear towards them all, and I'm noticed by the one I'm taking to be the puppet mistress. "Stop!" she screams, causing Miss Huntress to halt in the middle of the death blow she was about to strike on Miss Aran. The controller gawks at me, paralyzed, as I thunder across the space between myself and her. Her freeze doesn't last long, though. "Big guy! Toss the cave woman 2 of the elves' knives and pick up the other 2 yourself. Now!" she barks in a tone I can easily recognize as a panicked order. A blood-covered Mr. Taylor grasps the 2 knives held by Miss Toon's left hands with his right. He one-handedly tosses them both across himself to Miss Huntress, who snatches one out of the air with each of her hands. Mr. Taylor then lifts one of his long, flat feet to stand on Miss Toon's lower right wrist, as he leans over to collect the 2 knives that were on her right side. "Cave woman, hold 1 knife to each of their throats. Big guy, hold 1 to hers and 1 to your own," she orders, just as I'm approaching the bottom of the ramp. Miss Huntress lays the leading edge of the knife she holds against each of Miss Aran and Lieutenant Runner's necks, as Mr. Taylor holds one up to Miss Toon's and one to his own. "Another step and I'll have my toys kill your friends, and then themselves," announces the puppet mistress. She says if you come any closer, she's going to have Fran and Victor kill the other 3, then themselves, translates Miss Twiller from the device hanging at my neck. "If you do that, there will be nothing to stop me from coming onto this ship and killing you for revenge, will there?" I observe, staring unblinkingly at the woman. Regardless, I stop at the bottom of the ramp, my chest heaving with pants I was able to keep out of my voice. She doesn't need to think long before she speaks again. "Then I'll tell them to kill your friends and then protect me," she says. "Then I'll order them to kill your friends, then defend me," relays Miss Twiller. "If you know as much about me as it seems as if you must, you surely know I'm a death welder. And I'm not just any death welder. I am the Empress and most formidable warrior of the most formidable kind of death welder yet known to the wider galaxy. I wouldn't put your faith in these 2, armed with only metal knives, being able to stand between myself and you for very long, if I were you. Especially not in such an enclosed space, where their acrobatics will be less useful to them. They might just injure me enough to make me angry and feel like a quick death is too good for you," I growl. Complicated emotions play across the cornered woman's face as Miss Twiller speaks to me. "So, how do you suggest we resolve this little Mexican standoff?" says the purple woman. She asks what you suggest, says Miss Twiller. "Relinquish your control of these 2, relinquish any weapons you might have, including whatever you use to enslave them, and come quietly. Do that and I will personally guarantee your safety as Empress of the Vrakhan," I state. The woman laughs as my words are translated for her. A high, cold, cruel laugh that banishes any hope I might have had for this impasse being resolved as favourably from my side as I suggested. No deal. I might look like a pampered princess, but you can bet your ass I'd die before I surrender. She says, however you looks, she'd die before she surrendered. How about you give me your jeans, and I let you take these 3 away? She says she'll let you take Toon, Zon, and Samus if you give her your jeans. Absolutely not, I answer. I won't even consider any resolution that doesn't include all 5 of these people returned, alive and free of any control. The woman's face twists in consideration as she listens to Miss Twiller relaying my demand. What assurance do I have that you won't just kill me the second I relinquish my control of them? She's asking how she knows you won't kill her as soon as she lets them go, says Miss Twiller. Are they still capable of removing the devices that were previously their translators by themselves? I clarify. They are, if I order them to. She says they can if she orders it. Then, order them off the ship with the other 3 and to remove your control only after you've made your escape. Order that if I try anything, they kill the other 3. I suggest. Could work, muses the slaver. That could work, translates Miss Twiller. What assurance do I have that you won't wait until you've got what you want, the ramp is about to close, and then order them to kill the hostages and themselves anyway? I ask. The woman shrouded in purple smoke sighs. My word isn't good enough. She asks whether her word is enough. If the word of an empress wasn't good enough for you, the word of a kidnapping thief isn't good enough for me, I answer coolly. The woman actually laughs at that before speaking at some length. She says, how about if I made them leave the knives and pulse guns on board and hold the others by the throats? You probably wouldn't have time to kill me and come back to stop them asphyxiating, but you could easily stop them if you were right next to them, couldn't you? Miss Twiller summarizes. I consider whether there's any possibility of her being able to trick me in any way before conceding. That sounds like it could work. So, do we have a deal? Asks the kidnapper. Do we have a deal? Translates the one around my neck. I hesitate. Is it really worth giving such people as this access to what, by all accounts, is such a miraculous substance as sanitite is? Is it worth allowing them to desecrate my people's most cherished resource? Not just my people's, but specifically mine. To appropriate it and turn it into nothing more than cheap battle armor? Is it worth knowing that whatever they do in that armor is at least partly my fault? Is it worth 5 lives to stop them from acquiring it? Then I look down into the blank faces of the 2 red-headed Terran warriors, staring placidly back at me, then further to the 3 defeated women lying on the ground. I can't conscience letting 5 honorable warriors die in such a way as this. I can't allow myself to be obliged to kill this woman for retribution before I've even made it to the capital to plead my people's case that we are civilized beings who deserve a seat at the table of galactic society. We have a deal, I answer. Excellent. Wait right there, sparkles the woman, seeming thrilled. Then to the 2 she has enslaved. If she moves, kill them then yourselves. She says to stay here and not to move or they'll kill everyone, relays Miss Twiller. I stand stock still as the woman disappears into the door behind her and I wait for her to return. When she reappears, the blue shimmering right fist of her ghost armor is closed as if the hand, I presume it contains, is clasping something beneath the purple smoke. She wields back with that arm before launching forward. I don't see whatever was thrown until it hits the ground and alerts me to its location with the sound of its bounce. The throw was so pathetic that the clear tube, visible to me only by its opaque cap and how it bends the light, ends up several meters short of where I can reach it. You need to order them not to kill anyone if I come to retrieve the vial, I observe. Right you are, laughs the woman. Don't do anything, as long as she doesn't come further than where it landed, guys. Come and get it, then back to where you are. She's ordered them not to do anything, so long as you don't come closer than where it is. You're allowed to come and retrieve it, but then you have to go back to where you are. I slowly walk forward and, careful not to let any part of myself advance closer than the little patch of bent light, I close my right thumb and forefinger around it. I shuffle rearwards as I draw back up to my full height with it. What now? I ask, directing my words at the hostage taker. Spit in it, she answers with a shrug. She wants you to spit in it, translates Miss Tweller before adding, the lid will probably unscrew anti-clockwise. I grasp the lid, meant for much nimbler hands than mine, between my fingers. While masticating on nothing, I twist it in the direction instructed and, with a little difficulty, I manage to get it open. I keep chewing until my lower tooth plate is acting as the dam to a little reservoir of saliva. I bring the mouth of the tube in my hand to touch it to the apex of the thanatite curve. Tipping my head down and forward, I pour a steady stream of spittle into the container I've been given. When my mouth is empty, I lift the tube to see that it's, surprisingly, only half full of clear liquid with the slightest tint of blue. It definitely felt like I had more in my mouth than that. I hold it up and ask, "This is enough?" Yes, more than enough. Now put the cap back on and throw it back here," she says, beckoning for it, transfixed. First order Mr. Taylor and Miss Huntress off the ship with Miss Aran, Lieutenant Runner and Miss Toon, leaving their weapons behind and with orders to remove your control as soon as you're gone, I answer, without waiting for Miss Tweller's translation. She rolls her eyes as my words are relayed to her and says, "You two, drop the knives and get off my ship with those girls. Hands on their throats, and if she tries to do anything to me or withhold the sample, kill them and then each other. Once I've made my escape with that tube, drop them and take off your translators." The pair she holds enslaved allow their blades to fall to the floor. The tall man pulls his betrothed to her feet and, keeping a firm but not crushing grip on her throat as he frog marches her off the vessel. The short woman has to work a lot harder with her much taller and less conscious charges. Eventually, she manages to get both of them in a sort of double headlock, while keeping a hand on each of their necks. She walks off the ship with 4 relatively long legs trailing on the ground behind her. "Now, give it to me," she orders, dropping the apparently affected half-whisper she's done most of her conversing in so far, as she holds out her hand in my direction. "Miss Tweller, were there any problems with the orders she gave Miss Huntress and Mr. Taylor?" I mutter to the woman on the rectangular medallion at my chest. "None that I heard, Your Majesty," she answers, matching her volume to mine. I grunt my understanding before reeling back the arm holding the tube. I spend a few fractions of a second calculating the appropriate force and trajectory of the throw to give the little Clearfile the best chance of landing on the walkway with the woman without falling short, bouncing back, or hitting the ceiling and being deflected downward. I fling the tube in her direction. It flies straight past her hand. For all her readily inferred intelligence, she seems to lack a lot of the rapid reactions and physical coordination I've seen from others of her kind, but thankfully my throw was good enough that, even without her catching it, doesn't bounce off the platform she lands on. She bends to pick it up. It slips beneath the blue shimmer of her armor and is obscured by the haze of purple. She considers it for a few seconds before turning to me and smirking. "Seems genuine. I'm pleasure doing business with you." "She says it was a pleasure doing business with you," says Miss Tweller, appearing to share my disdain for that sentiment. "I can't say the same. I hope this is the last business I ever have to do with you or your organization," I spit in answer.
She giggles as the ramp lifts between us. I see her as she dispels her ghost armor, exactly at the moment I no longer have time to get to her over the closing ramp, and raises a dainty, pale, five-fingered hand, his palm facing me. She wiggles the fingers in my direction, before turning to disappear into the door behind her. The ramp closes. I back away as the ship lifts from the ground. The two mindslayers neither move away nor release their fellow hostages. With very little noise but the whoosh of disturbed air, the vessel leaves the enormous roofless chamber at great speed. There are two heavy thuds on my right as Miss Huntress unceremoniously drops the two women she was dragging, and a gasp of relief as Mr. Taylor lets go of his injured betrothed's neck. Both of their hands move to their temples, without hesitation.